Hello Internet, or maybe I should say Howlo Internet. My girlfriend's away on holiday for a week, so I've decided while I'm staying at home looking after my two little werewolves to have a Howl-a-day. I promise you that's the last time I do that pun. Essentially, I'm going to watch a Howling movie a day and do a video for you guys. I know it means that whilst she's off having day after day of fun, I'm going to descend and plumb the depths of sequel hell, but at least I get to start tonight with Joe Dante's The Howling. And after that, some of the others I've seen, some of them I haven't seen. I'm only doing the first 6, I'm not insane. But I'm going to take these guys for a walk now, and then I'm going to start my Howl-a-day. Sorry, I had one more. I promise I won't do it again. The werewolves in The Howling are bipedal. They walk upright on their 2 back legs, which is the form I prefer them in, although I love the 4-legged werewolf in American Werewolf in London. They can change at will, they're shapeshifters in this version, so they're not beholden to the full moon, and they can regenerate. I think it's fair to say as well that they're absolutely enormous. We get our first brief glimpse of a werewolf about halfway through the movie, 40 minutes in, when Bill's attacked and bitten. Very quick and fast. You don't get a real idea of the size or shape of it. About 5 minutes after that, we get our nudity and sex scene, and we get a very traditional sort of transformation scene that uses cutaways. So at first we see our actors as they are, then we see them with the false teeth and the contact lenses, and that line of drool from Chris Stone's mouth, which completely sells this scene. Then with the body hair and facial prosthetics, and a hairy, long-fingered, clawed hand that rakes across his back, and finally, unfortunately, the little cartoon segment which shows the silhouettes of humans turning fully into wolves and howling, which I have never liked and will never like. Apart from dissolves that Universal used in their Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., Bob Bottin pretty much uses every trick in the book in this movie. I mean, he doesn't bring out the big guns until a little bit later in the full transformation. There's a deleted scene though where there's even a fully rendered stop motion werewolf, which is kind of fun to check out if you've got the special edition DVD with the deleted scenes. It didn't make the final cut of the movie, but yeah, there's even a bit of Ray Harryhausen in there with a stop motion werewolf. There's only really one kill in the movie, aside from various werewolves who get shot, double over and fall down, and that's the character of Terry. Her attack in the woods and the cabin really gives you your first idea of the size of these creatures, and if you remember, she gets attacked in the cabin and then goes into the woodshed and finds a hatchet, chops the wolf's arm off, and we see it turn back from a wolf's hand into a human hand. For me, that's got echoes of the legend of the huntsman who cuts off the wolf's paw, wraps it up to take it home, and when he places it on the table, it's a human hand, and he recognizes the wedding band as that of his wife's, and the realization hits him that his wife was a werewolf. This whole little section of the movie, from Terry's attack in the cabin to running to Dr. Wagner's office to calling her partner, finding Eddie Quist's file, and then her finally confronting and being attacked by Eddie Quist as a full werewolf, really plays like a little mini movie right in the middle of The Howling, and could almost be played as a short film in and of itself. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I love the fact that the movie's prepared to pause for a while, take a breath, and let this second-tier character have her moments. And when Eddie Quist's wolf attacks her in Wagner's office, we do see that he is huge. He toys with her. He takes his time with her. The whole scene is primal. There is a genuine sense of the human as a prey animal to an apex predator, and the way he just takes his time, eventually leans in and bites her slowly on the neck, is actually truly horrifying. And we get to it. The transformation after a more traditional fangs and contact lenses affair, and then being introduced to the full wolf. Dee Wallace's character Karen comes back into the office, finds Terry's body. Eddie Quist has turned back into a human, and then goes through the process for her benefit, what he wanted to show her right at the start of the movie, of transforming back into the beast. And this really is the money shot of the entire movie. Joe Dante himself says on the documentary on my DVD, if he was going to cut the scene again now, he'd make it a little shorter. But at the time, and this was really his second, maybe third movie, at the time the company who was fronting all the money put pressure on him to make this scene as long as possible. And I can understand why. This is how the movie was sold. We're going to do a transformation scene like no one has ever seen before, and that's why we've invested in this movie. It leads now, yes, it goes on a little too long, because poor Dee Wallace, who it cuts to occasionally, probably doesn't really know what she's reacting to. It does seem like she's standing there for minute after minute after minute, whilst Robert Picardo as Eddie Quist is standing there with his face bumping and lumping with all the bladders under his prosthetics, and then the hair and the jaws and the claws and the shirt ripping, and you're just thinking, why the hell don't you just run away? The idea to do a werewolf transformation scene, the like of which hasn't been seen before, in harsh, bright light with as few cuts as possible, is a key moment in The Howling and in American Werewolf in London, both of which came out in 1981. And it's no surprise, really. John Landis had been kicking around the idea for American Werewolf for a long time, and he'd been talking to the genius Rick Baker about ways he might do it. And Rick, like the stage magician he is, the cinema magician, went away and came up with some really groundbreaking ideas of how to do this. And then the film never happened, and the film never happened, and the film never happened. And Dante approached Rick Baker to do a werewolf movie, and he said, well, I'm supposed to be doing this John Landis movie, but it's not happening. So, yes, I'll do your werewolf movie. Now, as Joe Dante tells it on the extras, Landis hears word of this, then moves heaven and earth to grease the wheels on his movie, and finally get the engine into production on what became American Werewolf in London. So Rick Baker said, very gentlemanly, I think, said to Joe Dante, well, look, this Landis's movie is happening now. I promised him first, but I have to I have to honor my promise. I have to work on his movie. But there's this guy, Rob Bottin, who he recommended, a kind of protege of Rick Baker's. Bottin would go on the next year, in 1982, with the release of John Carpenter's The Thing, to produce what I consider to be his absolute masterpiece. His special effects work on The Thing is just peerless. Bob Bottin did some amazing work here in The Howling, and it's with prosthetics and puppetry and bladders under the skin being blown, and under the shirt to rip the shirt, and Foley work, adding the noises and the bone popping and crunching, and the puppet face with the eyes rolling and the drooling and the mouth, up to finally the full werewolf that eventually gets acid thrown in its face, and Dee Wallace eventually realises that there's a door right there and she should run for it. Having rewatched it, I've got a few thoughts that I'd like to share. There's a very good reason why this movie, there are a few good reasons why this movie consistently tops lists of the greatest werewolf movies ever made, and for many people it's their number one. Personally, for me, it's a very close second to American Werewolf in London. Just for me, I think American Werewolf is, if you'll pardon the pun, it's a leaner beast. It's a meaner beast. I think the jokes hit the target more in American Werewolf, and the mixture of comedy and horror works better in American Werewolf. The satire element in the Howling, for me, kind of only works in retrospect. I love the idea of taking a swipe at the 80s self-help and therapy culture with the notion that there's a sort of countryside spa retreat for werewolves who just want to fit in. That's hilarious. You only realise that's happening on second viewing and third viewing, though. You don't actually see that in the movie. There's about 10 minutes worth of deleted scenes where there are some of these werewolf characters in group therapy, which is quite funny. But you never actually see werewolves in therapy. I'm quibbling over minor things. The Howling is an amazing werewolf movie. The other reason it constantly tops lists of the greatest werewolf movies ever is there are so few good werewolf movies. It boggles my mind. I don't know why. As I descend further into the franchise, I know that I'm going to be dabbling in some awful werewolf movies. But you can almost count them on your hand. You've got American Werewolf, you've got The Howling, you've got Dog Soldiers. A Company of Wolves hardly ever gets mentioned, but A Company of Wolves is one of the greatest werewolf movies ever made. Bad Moon, I really like. So that's 5. Where are the others? Finally, while I was watching it again, the most interesting, the strangest arc that any character goes through is Bill, Dee Wallace's, Karen's husband, who starts off as very much a modern man. He's a vegetarian. He's plays the supporting role to his wife, who has the more successful career, and it wouldn't be a stretch to assume, because she's a TV radio news anchor, that she pulls in more money than he does, and then he gets bitten by a werewolf, and it seems to completely deconstruct the idea of a modern man as an absolute myth. And after he's bitten, he goes on the wolf hunt where he shoots and kills a rabbit. This is after saying that one of his friends, he sort of cut all ties with him when he found out that he was a hunter. He goes on and enjoys a rabbit hunt, which has sort of shades of Straw Dogs for me, and Dustin. It reminds me of Dustin Hoffman in Straw Dogs. But then he then moves on to eating meat, that's a trope of werewolf movies. That's fine. But then he moves on to adultery and then spousal abuse, and weirdly he becomes more masculine, but the more masculine he becomes, the more masculinity is portrayed in a negative light. It's very strange. And then at the end, you've got Patrick Macnee's character, Dr. Wagner, who has been telling this group of people that they can rise above their inner beast. He's a werewolf himself, and once he realises that Chris is shooting real silver bullets, walks towards him, knowing that he's going to get shot, and as he falls, doubles over and falls, he says, "Thank God," meaning thank God the curse is over. It tells the ultimate lie of what he's been trotting out. The beast can't be tamed, and really, rather than damping it down with psychology and therapy and self-help, the only release from it is death. That's quite a bleak message for 21st century man, and I'm not sure I hold too much truck with it. But then again, I am just about to go out and buy a big fat burger. That's The Howling, and I know that that's going to be the very best of my A Howl-a-day trot through the Howling series. So have pity on me, because tomorrow I watch The Howling 2.